to the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, section number 2. In this section, we're going rotation number 121, 122. That's NC State versus Pittsburgh, all the way down to 139, 140. UTSA at UAB. The middle section for the College Football Saturday card. Mid-Major Matt, second guest up at Mid-Major Matt, sportsmemo.com. Mid-Major Matt, welcome in. How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling good, although if people stick around to the FCS section, they may actually see me shed tears because we're losing one of our favorite teams of the podcast. That's just a reason for people to stick around towards the end if they really want to.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We do have a kind of a extra VIP section, which we don't charge extra for. The whole podcast is free. And Mid-Major Matt does break down all the FCS games, so we'll quick hit that at the end as well. But starting off here, Mid-Major Matt, like we were just talking about with Robbie Vito, man, this Saturday's 12 noon slate gets off hot. There is a lot of games. It's going to be tough to keep up with. ACC Network airing this one, 121, 122, NC State at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's now got a number in front of them, Mid-Major Matt, number 24 in the country, laying 14 points at home, 47 the total in this ACC matchup.
Well, we talked about it last week because I believe I had Pittsburgh. You know, we liked Pittsburgh in that spot because we said, look, you know, defense beats offense, and defense did beat offense with that Louisville game. They won 23-20, and it gave some cred to that side of the ball because, look, they shut down Syracuse and they shut down Austin Peay. So, you know, a lot of teams are going to shut down those two teams. But they're holding teams to just 56.7 rushing yards per game and 121 passing yards per game. And in comes an NC State team that I'm already disappointed with. You know, last week we found out right before kickoff, Virginia Tech was going to be without 24 players and a couple of coordinators / coaches. And I thought, okay, you know what? I'll take a shot. Team's first game against NC State, playing their second game, and NC State laid a massive egg. They lost 45-24. They did beat Wake Forest week 1, 45-42. But you look at this NC State team, they've allowed 463 yards rushing. They have no quarterback. You know, last week, Bailey Hockman came in. He was not very good. Everybody thought entering the season Devin Leary was going to be the starting quarterback. Hockman came in. He was okay against Wake Forest. He was terrible last week, so we don't know about a quarterback. And their secondary is banged up. Junior corner Tashawn Smith is out for the season. They've got a really young secondary. The hope is that Tanner Ingle will come back along with linebacker Peyton Wilson. But there's got to be some sort of letdown potentially for Pittsburgh. They do have a road trip to BC next, so that's not going to be as much of a look ahead here. As you said, around a 2-touchdown favorite. I don't know if I'm ready to lay that yet with Pittsburgh. The hope is that you could look potentially at the under here. But then again, you know, NC State's defense gave up 45 to a rusty Virginia Tech team last week. So this game, unfortunately, you know, there's probably nothing here right now in terms of value.
Next game up in the Big 12 here, 123, 124, 7:30 Eastern kick here, Mid-Major Matt. Oklahoma in Ames, Iowa, taking on Iowa State, the Cyclones, catching 7 at home, 63 the total.
Last year, Oklahoma won this game 42-41 at home. They were up 35-14 at halftime. The hope is that there's going to be about 15,000 fans here. 15,000, probably not yet where we can make a difference, but at least there will be some sort of atmosphere for this game. And when it first came out, probably, you know, before the season began, you're like, all right, this is a great opportunity to take Iowa State. You've got Texas right before you've got Oklahoma right before the Red River shootout. But then Oklahoma lays this egg to Kansas. They lose 38-35 in a game that they probably should have won. So you say, okay, well, how does Oklahoma do the game before the Red River shootout? Because we know Texas is next. It's the big game. 2019, they beat Kansas 45-20. Okay, it was Kansas. 2018, they won 66-33 against Baylor. 2017, they lost to this Iowa State team 38-31. Oklahoma's rush defense has been really good this year, so that'll be a challenge for Breece Hall. Kansas State had 10 first downs in the win against Oklahoma. So Kansas State, which was also 2 for 11 on third down, still managed to put up 38 points in the victory. You know, the shine is off the Oklahoma defense. Everybody talks about Alec Grinch's group. I lean to Iowa State here. Iowa State has a win at TCU 37-34. They lost that first week to ULL, to Louisiana 31-14. Breece Hall has been so good at running back, 260 yards and 4 touchdowns. And oh, yeah, by the way, Brocktober is going to be in session for Iowa State. We know how good Brock Purdy is in October. Small lean to Iowa State here as the home dog, just in case Oklahoma's looking ahead, although I don't think they will, coming off a loss. But I need to see more from Spencer Rattler here against a better opponent before I can back the Sooners in this type of situation.
Mid-major Matt, we're heading more into your territory here with the most underrated conference in the country, in my opinion. Number 25 ranked Memphis at SMU. We got Memphis -2 in the hook on the road, 74.5 the total in this AAC matchup, mid-major Matt.
So it's been it will have almost been a month since Memphis last played. If you remember, September 5th was their last game, 37-24, the win over Arkansas State. They rack up 502 yards of offense. We've talked about it. Memphis has Brady White. They've got all the skill position guys on offense. Ryan Silverfield, while he is a new head coach, at least was in the system and as a offensive line coach, so he's familiar with the team. Well, they've had so many COVID issues as of late, and they've had some games postponed. And so who knows what we're going to get from Memphis? Are they going to be rusty, or are they going to be ready to go for this one? Back on Monday, Ryan Silverfield said that they're going to miss players for this game due to contact tracing for COVID-19. They had a shorter, modified practice schedule last week, and that they're going to try and get more players, more reps in this game to keep them fresh against SMU. So it's hard to back Memphis in this situation, at least until game day when we find out, let some people who know this sort of thing go and find out through the grapevine who the players are that we're not going to have. So you can't honestly back on a Wednesday when we're taping this show. You can't back a team that we know is not going to have a full roster. Just can't do it. I don't care if it's a bunch of nobodies. You just can't based on the information we have. On the other side, you've got an SMU team that's coming off a 50-7 scrimmage win essentially over Stephen F. Austin. They also have the 65-35 win over North Texas, and they beat Texas State 31-24. Thank God they unchained the offense, because that week one was very disappointing against Texas State. They ran the ball a lot more. They took the ball out of Shane Buechele's hands. I love what I've seen from Shane Buechele so far. 68% of his passes completed, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. To me, if you really need to bet it now, I lean to SMU. But I also need to wait and make sure that we find out as best we can who's playing for Memphis and who's not playing. If you really like SMU in this situation, jump on it now, because let's say somebody key for Memphis is not playing, you're not going to get this number. Heck, they may be a favorite by kickoff. So if you like SMU, take it now. If you're kind of leaning towards them, you want to wait till Saturday, but just know you may have missed the best number for them.
Yeah, mid-major bet, I wouldn't be surprised to see SMU go off as the favorite by kickoff. We've just seen the betting markets really not like these corona issues at all and move against them. And with only a 2.5 point spread with the away team, I really worry about that. I like SMU here.
Yeah, and by the way, the total 70, what you said, I mean, last year was 54-48, 800 yards passing, no turnovers, 53 first downs. They could do it once again. The question is Memphis going to be ready to go right away? Do they need a little bit of adjustment time? Do you live bet the over after a low-scoring first quarter for Memphis? That'll be the key if you want to live bet this game.
All right, mid-major Matt, next game up. It's a fun one. Staying in the AAC, Tulsa at UCF. ESPN2, 7:30 Eastern kick here. 72 now the total. 21.5 UCF laying in the bounce house.
We've made a lot of money off of UCF first halves. That was one of the things, and you and I have done a ton of these. I jumped on UCF first halves quite a bit. One of the ones I don't believe that hit was that Tulsa game last year. They won 34-31 as a 15-point underdog. Tulsa they're an okay team, but once again, they're another squad. They haven't played since September 19th. They lost that game to Oklahoma State 16-7. The defense was fantastic. The offense was disappointing. Zach Smith wasn't great, but then again, they were going up against Oklahoma State, a team that had 10 returning starters on defense. The other thing that's a big issue is they lost running back Shamari Brooks to a torn ACL. That's a big loss at running back because they had 2 guys that were capable of getting 1,000 yards. Now they're down to 1. UCF won last week, 51-28. We gave out the first half last week. It hit. Of course, they gave up that touchdown the first drive, and then what? They had 4 first false starts on that first drive and still scored a touchdown. They've already beat Georgia Tech 49-21. Dylan Gabriel, 825 yards passing in 2 weeks. They anticipate that Otis Anderson's going to be 100% for this game. UCF has forced 9 turnovers. At home in a revenge situation against a Tulsa team that could be potentially rusty, having not played the past few weeks, I'm just going to keep playing the trend here. I think UCF were in the first half is worth a look once again.
Yeah, it's tough to step in front of UCF. I know they got to win by more than 3 touchdowns, but you bring up, last year's affair, plus the fact Tulsa, is it COVID issues or why haven't they played in a while?
I actually believe, and I can look it up real quick, I actually believe they had a week off and then there was a COVID problem. It's just it's been a while. And remember, some teams in the AAC didn't schedule their non-conference games. Like Temple hasn't played yet. So there's just some weird scheduling quirks in the AAC so far.
Good stuff, mid-major Matt. Another 12 noon Eastern kick here, 9 a.m. Pacific, 129, 130. Fascinating handicap here, mid-major Matt. Interested in your opinion in the Sun Belt. Arkansas State at Coastal Carolina, 64.5. I'll tell you, mid-major Matt, looking at this line, I know Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, looked very good on national television, but they're only catching 3 here. Meaning, if you're betting them, inside the threes, you're thinking they're going to beat Arkansas State. I don't know if they have the manpower to do that. Have they made that big of a step this year?
I'd have to dig. See, here's the thing. These are two darlings, and they become, I wouldn't say quite public, because nobody cares about the Sun Belt, but they're public in terms of Arkansas State already beat Kansas State back on September 12th. This is their third straight road game. They lost that Memphis game 37-24, but they covered. We gave out Arkansas State that weekend, and it was a good winner there. Arkansas State's been very good with the passing attack. Jonathan Adams, with that one-handed catch he made against Kansas State, has put himself on the map here. So they are somewhat of a public darling. But then you look at Coastal Carolina, they are somewhat as well. They played that Friday night game back on September 18th against Campbell.
Yeah.
Granted, it probably didn't get a lot of eyeballs, but it was the only game. It was a Friday night. It was on ESPN. They win that game 43-21. They get the, how should we say it, the Mountain West Hawaii treatment the first weekend when they beat Kansas 38-23. It was the 10 o'clock game.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Right. Tim Brando did the game. So they got the treatment, and it was on Fox. So people have seen this Coastal Carolina team. But once again, a little bit of rust potentially. They didn't play. They haven't played since September 18th. The key for Coastal Carolina is they've got to keep it close so they can run the ball. 78 rushes this year, 35 passes. Opponents have rushed it 88 times to 60 passes. So therefore, they want to get the clock moving. They want to get the ball moving. They do play with some tempo. I don't believe Coastal Carolina huddles. Coastal is 2-9 against the spread at home the last 3 seasons. Everything tells me I want to take Coastal plus the points here, like you said. But Arkansas State's been impressive this year, and you've got 2 teams that haven't played for a couple of weeks, so this could be a great live betting situation. See who is more ready, see who has looked better the first couple of drives and jump in, or if you take one side, maybe you live bet the other, try and get a middle here. I hate to be wishy-washy, but since neither of these 2 teams have played for a couple of weeks, I kind of want to wait and see what we get from these 2. They both have potent offenses. They both have okay defenses. So maybe the over's worth a look as well. But once again, they haven't played for a couple weeks here. So this could be a good live betting situation, if anything.
Mid-Major Matt at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. Guys, check out his college football, sportsmemo.com. 14-8 his last 22. Also, if you're into betting the NFL, Mid-Major Matt puts a package up with his NFL props. He's 15-4 his last 19 releases with those NFL props. Check him out, sportsmemo.com. We got 131, 132 Navy at Air Force up next, Mid-Major Matt. -7. We're seeing Navy on the highway, 46 the total. Mid-Major Matt, Navy and Air Force, there is a situation here where 40 players from Air Force aren't going to be allowed to play this season because of something that happened in the Mountain West not playing. Do you know anything about them fixing that situation, or are they really going to go with half of their roster this year?
Well, so they're not going to go with half the roster, but what we're talking about here is turnbacks. And basically I believe I don't know if it's just an Air Force thing, but basically the kids can spend a semester away from the academy. It's a turnback. And basically they still have their eligibility and everything, but they have the opportunity to spend a semester away. I don't know if it's like an internship sort of thing or if it's a family thing. But there's a lot of players, including some big-time players who decided to do the turnbacks. Their defense actually has 0 returning starters back. Mm-hmm. There are some guys that played last year. There is some talent there on defense, but they have right now with the depth chart that I saw in several places, 0 returning starters back on defense. But here's the thing about Air Force, they play a ton of guys. There's still a lot of guys on that defense who've gotten experience. And oh yeah, by the way, they practice against the triple option. Academy games, actually this series alone, 14 of the last 18 have gone under the total. Last year did not do that. It was 34-25. And by the way, the actual trend here is the first half unders, because it was 14-6 last year. This is a perfect, I think, first half under here, because all week we've heard from Ken Niumatalolo. They don't know what to prepare for. DJ Hammond, who is the guy who ran this offense so well for Air Force, is currently not in good standing, in quotation. I don't know what that means. Nobody really knows what that means. Mike Schmidt who was the backup last year, transferred out. So he's not there either. So it leads either sophomore Hazik Daniels or junior Warren Bryan to run the offense. Now, Caden Remsburg is back. Love Caden Remsburg. Great running back. A guy that's very big, runs this system really well. They've got several guys up front that are back. Timothy Jackson is back as well. So there's not as much of a problem when it comes to the offensive side. You look at Navy. Navy's flying high, pardon the pun. I guess not so much because this isn't, the Air Force, but
No,
they feel good after that win against Tulane 27-24. Of course, they needed to come back, and they also needed to throw the ball to get that victory back on September 19th. Navy's defense looked really good. I like Navy's defensive coordinator here. Newberry he does well here. But it's the first game of the season for Air Force. Since 2005, games involving 2 of the 3 service academies have gone 35-9-1 to the under. Part of me really likes Air Force. Part of me really likes the whole mystique angle. No one knows what they're going to come out with. I mean, of course, they're going to run the triple option, but Navy's spending all week preparing for ghosts, essentially. To me, the best play in this game, and which will be the number one play when you ask at the end, first half under in this game between Navy and Air Force. That's the best play, but I also have a lean to Air Force, especially at 7, or if it goes over 7. I think the mystique of ghosts of our Air Force make them a really intriguing play, especially in the air, in the altitude at Air Force.
That was first half under. Looking at that one, right, mid-major Matt?
First half under is my favorite play. A lean to the Air Force at 7 or more.
All right. 135, 136 up next. 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Here talking Texas Tech. With a tough loss last week at Kansas State. Kansas State laying 2.5, 64 the total in Manhattan.
Well, this is the classic situational game. You've got the team coming off a tremendously tough home overtime loss to Texas in Texas Tech, traveling to the team that just had a really huge upset win on the road in Kansas State. This is a Kansas State team you can throw on. They've allowed 717 passing yards so far. They've gone under in 14 of their 19 Big 12 games. The question is, will they show up for this one? Remember, home field advantage is not going to be as much of a thing here. Texas Tech has gone over in 12 of their last 14 games as an underdog. And that last year they had 4 one-score losses and another loss by 10 points to Iowa State. So this is a Texas Tech team that's constantly getting close. They're just not getting over the edge here. Kansas State won this game in Lubbock last year, 30-27. It was a 6-3 halftime game. I don't expect that once again. I'm sitting this game out. Situationally, you think Texas Tech, but once again, what's Texas Tech's mindset in this one? If you play DFS, I'm looking to load up on Alan Bowman. I think Alan Bowman's busy against a vulnerable Kansas State team. Maybe throw some TJ Vasher in there, a decent little stack if you play DFS in college football.
Do you recommend that? You like playing it?
I do. FanDuel and DraftKings both have a lot of contests for it. They have a lot of games. I play it. I dabble in both of them. I think if you have an angle and if you know these big games very well, you could certainly win in college football DFS, especially if you know that sleeper guy who's in the mid-range price-wise that can get you over the top.
I like it. And I believe it with both of those, you can refer a friend if you want to send me a link and get whatever kickback. Feel free, because I want to start that this week, mid-major Matt.
You can't do it in Vegas though. So are you in Florida right now, or are you in Vegas?
That's what always kept me off of that. In Costa Rica, I couldn't do it, and then moving to Vegas, I couldn't do it. I'll be in Florida this weekend, so I'll tail your DFS recommendations. You give those out on Twitter?
Yeah, I post the lineups on Twitter.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Check that out, guys, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. Next game up here, we stay in the Big 12. Oklahoma State at Kansas. We're seeing the Cowboys -3 touchdowns, actually as high as -22 right now on the highway. 54 the total here.
Oklahoma State's 14-4-2 against the spread in this series the last 20 games. Of course it is, because Kansas is terrible. Oklahoma State, though, we haven't seen the best of Oklahoma State yet this year. I argue it's probably because of Spencer Sanders. I was about to say Summer Sanders. Spencer Sanders at quarterback. Last week he didn't play. He gets hurt in that Tulsa game. And yes, that was my bad pick from week 1 when we took the over in the Oklahoma State points. But of course we didn't handicap Spencer Sanders getting hurt. It's the big 3. It's Sanders, it's Tylan Wallace, and it's Chuba Hubbard. Once again, Chuba Hubbard has to be in your DFS lineups. He's going to go nuts. The big question is, are they going to put Spencer Sanders out there at less than 100% with a bye week potentially next week and then the rest of their schedule? Or are they going to put the freshman Illingworth out there and kind of be workmanlike? I can't back Kansas. Last week, every reason in the world was to back Kansas. Baylor team with new system, Baylor team, first game of the year, Baylor team that had a lot of question marks everywhere, and they lost 47-14. They lost 38-23 to Coastal Carolina. We talked about that earlier. Kansas still doesn't have a quarterback. They have 3 different guys that they're trying, but none of them are very good. A lot of times I usually like to take the over, especially in Kansas games that are at home, but I don't know what we're going to expect from Oklahoma State here. If Spencer Sanders doesn't play, I don't know if we're going to get a buttoned up Oklahoma State effort. So to me, maybe the under's worth a look here. Oklahoma State's defense maybe shuts down Kansas, and then your worry is, will Oklahoma State score 40 points or more? Slight lean to the under here. Maybe it goes up a couple more points and that lean becomes a play. But right now, slight lean to the under here. That's the only way I'm going in this one.
Mid-major Matt, last FBS matchup here. UTSA at UAB. This one on Stadium TV, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific kick. 54.5 being the total, -3 touchdowns. That's the Blazers of UAB laying it home.
We're living in a world right now, perfect encapsulation of 2020. UTSA and UTEP both have 3 wins. I mean, that's just crazy to think of, considering how bad those teams were. I'm pretty sure you won your win totals if they were still out there. I don't think they are, because, they changed all the schedules up, and I think they're playing less than 12 games. But UTSA won that game last Friday against MTSU, 37-35. The other 2 wins are Stephen F. Austin, 24-10, Texas State, 51-48. The big question here, and the reason why I can't make a play in this game yet, Frank Harris, the guy who's done everything for UTSA, suffered a sprain to his right knee last week and is a game-time decision. If he plays for UTSA and if he's anywhere close to 100%, I kind of like the Roadrunners. They're going to run a lot of plays. Harris runs this system really well, but the question is, and I don't think he's going to be 100% even if he plays, the backup is Josh Atkins, and if I'm correct, I think he's the New Mexico State transfer quarterback. He wasn't very good at New Mexico State. On the UAB side, they beat South Alabama 42-10. They've lost 31-14 to Miami, and they beat Central Arkansas 45-35. Tyler Johnston was out for that game. He's probably out for this one. Didn't matter. Spencer Brown did his thing. Spencer Brown's a great running back, and they did just enough running it that the quarterback was able to pass the ball and everything. Lucero, Lucero, was the quarterback. He's a freshman. UAB is 15-6-1 against the spread in their last 22 games as a favorite. 19-11-1 in their last 31. To me, there's a lot of question marks in this game. I'm going to pass on this one until I get more of an idea as to whether Frank Harris will play. If he doesn't play, UAB should win this one rather easily. If he does play, maybe I would look at UTSA, but even then, it might just be an outright pass here.
Guys, this is the college football every game on the board. This is the second segment here. We got the FCS matchups coming up next. Make sure to check out Mid-Major Matt, sportsmemo.com. He's 14-8 in his last 22 college football plays. Also, if you're an NFL bettor, his NFL props, last 19, 15-4. So some hot runs there on the gridiron. Follow him on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. Guys, that does it for the FBS games for this section. We will bring in Oskheim Sports to finish off the card here, but we got a special VIP section here of FCS football with Mid-Major Matt. Looks like, 5-ish games or so off the board here, or on the extra board, excuse me. So I'll throw it over to you, Mid-Major Matt. We got 5 minutes here. Have at it.
All right, so North Alabama and Liberty, as we said, so for the people who haven't watched this video real quick, the FCS lines are a little flimsy. One bet moves them. There's about 1 or 2 books that have the lines out, but for the most part, you can't get them in the U.S. You wait till Saturday, they will come out. All right, game 1, Liberty is hosting North Alabama. Liberty last year had 2 FCS games. They beat Hampton 62-27. They beat Maine 59-44. Liberty's offense has been really good this year. Scored 36 on FIU. They scored 30 on Western Kentucky. They don't have a look-ahead situation here. The question here is Malik Willis. He's day-to-day with a left elbow issue. He's been really good for Liberty this year. They've got some decent backups. Maine transfer Chris Ferguson. There's another kid that I'm sure they're going to like to get in here. North Alabama, first game of the season. They did not play an FBS opponent last year. 13 returning starters, 6 on offense, 7 on defense. They've got 2 decent quarterbacks, Blake Devers or Rhett Files. Devers is the more experienced. They've got a good group of wide receivers here. 3 transfer offensive linemen, but their running situation could be an issue. If I play anything here, I'm looking at the first half. I might also look at the over for this game overall because Liberty's offense has been very good. Their defense has given up a little bit, but I'm looking at a first half here potentially for Liberty because Malik Willis, they're going to look to get him out as quick as possible, or if they don't get him out, the second half, he's going to play a very static, basic offense. So to me, I want to get a full-strength Liberty here against a team that hasn't played a game yet this season, didn't play an FBS opponent last year. Liberty in the first half is worth a look here in this Liberty-North Alabama game. I know you're familiar with Malik Willis since you're an Auburn fan.
Yeah, absolutely, mid-major Matt. I mean, my question would be, North Alabama is Terry Bowden still the head coach there? Do you know?
I do not know. I don't think so. I would have seen it in my travels. I don't believe Terry Bowden's still the head coach there at North Alabama. I believe they're also the Lions, if we were checking in on that one.
Okay.
All right, game 2. Army is a massive 31-point favorite around against Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian lost to UTEP back on September 19th, 17-13. They outgained them. You could actually say Abilene Christian probably should have won the game, but they had 2 turnovers that killed them. They're hoping to have Kobe Clark back, who had the single season record for receptions last year. So that'll help the offense, but they're not exactly anything great. On the Army side, they lost to Cincinnati 24-10. They beat Louisiana Monroe, and they've got Middle Tennessee State as well in that first game. Next week, they've got the Citadel. So 2 FCS opponents back-to-back for Army. I believe they actually gave a waiver this year for 2 FCS opponents because everybody had to scramble so much to find their schedule. Army last year beat their FCS opponent, Morgan State, 52-21. Army's defense is giving up just 192 total yards and has forced 6 turnovers in this one. Once again, I'm looking potentially at an Army first half play here because you'll get a fully focused Army. Problem here is that they're going to drain a lot of clock. It's going to be, if it's 31, it's probably going to be around 15, 16, or 17. That might be too much. Maybe you look at a first half under and hope that you get one of those 17-play, 99-yard drives that drain a lot of the clock when it comes to Army here. Don't love either of them, but if you are looking to play this. The other game involving an FBS opponent, Jacksonville State makes their debut for the season. They travel to Tallahassee to play a pissed-off Florida State team. 26.5 is around the number here. Florida State last year in their FCS game, they beat Alabama State 49-12. They're going to be fired up here. I mean, it's going to be a tough situation. It's not a good Florida State team. They actually, according to the depth chart here, Mike Norvell moved a lot of freshmen and sophomores up in the depth chart. James Blackman's still the quarterback. That's why I can't back Florida State here. I don't think he's a very good quarterback, and I also think they're going to put the Rodemeyer kid in. He was kind of good against Miami, although nobody's very good. You look at Jacksonville State side, they were 6-6 last year. They had no FBS opponents. Zarek Cooper is one of their 8 returning starters at quarterback, 59.2% completion percentage, 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, only 4 defensive starters back. If you are a college football nut, you'll have heard of the name Zarek Cooper. He transferred in from Clemson. He has thrown for almost 7,000 yards, 60 touchdowns, and 26 interceptions in the last 2 seasons combined. In theory, this is a get-right game for Florida State, but I have no interest in this one. All right, 2 FCS games, and then we will be done here. Drew, Central Arkansas at North Dakota State. It's about a 23-point favorite. You know what the fascinating part of this game is, Drew? This is North Dakota State's only game in the spring. This is their only game because they literally want to get Trey Lance, who has NFL aspirations, out in front of the scouts. Now, they are going to play a full schedule. I think February is the Missouri Valley stuff, so they are going to play, but this is their only game right now because I think they figure that Trey Lance is not going to play because he's got NFL dreams. You look at this North Dakota State team, pretty much all their skill position guys are back. Their top 2 receivers, Christian Watson, Phoenix Sproles, Adam Cofield at running back. I mean, this team is a steamroller. They're going to have, I think, friends and family in terms of a crowd, which is good for Central Arkansas because North Dakota State is arguably one of the loudest stadiums in America when it comes to it's full, but it's not going to be full. I think it's a friends and family crowd. You look at Central Arkansas so far, they're 2-1. Last week they came back. They beat Missouri State 27-20. They lost 45-35 to UAB, and they played in that Austin Peay game, which feels like 3 years ago, 24-17. Defense could struggle here. Central Arkansas's defense hasn't been very good this year, but you're also getting a somewhat rusty North Dakota State game, although they do realize that since this is the only game, they've probably been practicing really hard. I don't really have a lean in this one. I think North Dakota State could come out rusty and struggle early. Maybe it's a live betting situation if you are watching the FCS, and if they do actually offer a live betting situation here, maybe you get in early after North Dakota State gets their rust out. But then again, this is North Dakota State. They're run like an NFL team. They could come out here and just beat the living daylights out of Central Arkansas. So be a fun game. Watch Trey Lance. He could be your favorite NFL team's quarterback next year. Who knows? He's really good. And finally, Drew, this is where the tears might start to come. Because if there's people who have watched our podcast know, Houston Baptist has been my favorite team. They've caused me lots of agony. We hit the over last week with Houston Baptist. They couldn't get that last stinking stop to get the cover, but this is their final game, and they're not coming back in the fall either, or they're not coming back in this, whatever the season is, they're not coming back. This is their last game for 2020, 2021. For those not familiar with Houston Baptist, they are the Huskies. They lost 66-38 to La Tech. They lost 35-33 at Texas Tech, and they lost 57-31 at North Texas. Bailey Zappa has completed 106 passes for 1,431 yards in 3 games, 12 touchdowns with a rushing touchdown as well. He had his first interception last week against Louisiana Tech. He's been a machine. Jarrett Stearns is a junior. He's caught at least 11 passes in each game. Ben Ratzlaff has 3 100-yard games, and freshman Josh Stearns is actually leading the team in receiving yards at 209. He's got great weapons all over. And they're traveling to Eastern Kentucky. It is a bit of a worry. It's their 4th road game, but it's their final game of the season. Eastern Kentucky came back last week. They beat the Citadel 37-14. They beat the triple option, but they lost 56-10 to West Virginia. They lost 59-0 at Marshall. They've given up 8 touchdown passes to West Virginia and Marshall. I argue Houston Baptist passing attack is on par with West Virginia and Marshall. The line is +3. I think I've got to take Houston Baptist in this one, plus the points. If you can get points, I think they win this game outright. Hell, I'd even sprinkle a little on the money line. I don't know what the over-under would be. I'd consider the over-under. I'd consider the over here, but I'm going to shed a tear because Houston Baptist has been so kind to me this year, and it's been such a joy to watch them. Houston Baptist plus the points, sprinkle a little on the money line. I'm going to miss my beloved Huskies.
Oh, so am I. Last game of the season. He's Mid-Major Matt on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. Guys, if you're watching on replay, feel free to throw in a comment in the comments section below on YouTube, WagerTalk YouTube, also wherever you're downloading your podcast at Sports Memo Podcast. So Mid-Major Matt, any closing words before we shut this down?
So the first half under in Navy Air Force is the best play. Houston Baptist plus the points with a sprinkle on the money line is the second best play, because I know you like to ask me that question to close things out.
All right, guys, check them out, sportsmemo.com. We will be back in 2 minutes with Minty Bets, breaking down the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast. Thanks for joining us, guys. Best of luck with your bets.